What's up, everyone? Michael here to talk about the most recent episode of Rick and Morty. Rick, a mort well lived. This one has it all. Rick starts a new religion that's absolutely not a religion. Morty's consciousness gets shattered into pieces inside a video game, and Summer does a Die Hard. But something else stood out to us, and please just go with me on this one. The episode aired on 9/11, and we don't think this is a coincidence. It seems like the episode explores the way in which religious narratives and mythologies both shape human culture and seem to fuel some pretty serious violence. Now, I know this probably sounds a little heavy for an episode that features Peter Dinklage playing an alien obsessed with Die Hard.
It's not every day one meets a fellow Die Hard enthusiast.
But we'll explain in this Wisecrack Quicktake on Rick and Morty, Season 6, Episode 2. Did Rick and Morty do a 9/11 episode? First, a quick summary. Rick, Morty, and Summer are at a space arcade that's been taken over by alien terrorists. Morty and Rick are both inside the video game Roy, which they previously played in Season 2.
Holy shit! This guy's taking Roy off the grid!
And in which Morty's consciousness is stuck, spread amongst all the non-Roy characters in the game. Rick, as Roy, has to convince all these characters that they are in fact his grandson in order to help Morty escape. All the while, Summer is holding off the terrorists after Rick told her to
just do a Die Hard.
Eventually, Rick and Morty make it out. They help Summer defeat the terrorists. It's all happily ever after, except for the fact that part of Morty's consciousness is now stuck in the video game Roy that's being wheeled into a warehouse, Indiana Jones style, potentially lost forever, but oh boy. But back to Roy, the game in which Rick has to convince all the Mortys to accept the reality that they are grandsons. It quickly turns into a sort of religious movement.
He's one of those cult people. They worship some psycho named Roy that says he's everybody's grandpa.
And despite Rick's best efforts,
you guys keep thinking I'm a religious leader. This isn't a religion. This is actual truth. I'm a scientist in real life.
This all seems to be the show's way of pointing out the often arbitrary roots of various religious movements.
I feel like every time I explain this, I lose followers, but this isn't a religion.
And the eagerness with which people join them and build a culture around them. But this non-religion religion, grandsondism, quickly establishes a type of in-group, out-group logic in which those acknowledging that they are 14-year-old boys who love masturbation are in, and those who remain attached to their video game selves are out. This is, of course, a thing that's happened throughout human history, often with less than kosher consequences.
Get down! You're all under arrest for being religious the wrong way!
What starts as a little old-fashioned social division based on religion quickly escalates to a full-on holy war, which is set off when Rick struggles to tell Morty that he loves him.
Rick! I'll get every single part of me to get on every ship and go with you. Good. But you have to tell us you love us. I mean, at this point, even if he said it, what's with the pause? Screw you! Wait for it! Holy war! Holier war! Holiest war ever!
I guess the message is tell people you love them, or you might cause a war. The use of the term holy war doesn't seem to be accidental, as the show is clearly pointing out how quickly religious beliefs can become excuses for large-scale violence. And again, this episode aired on 9/11. And the show isn't original in making the argument that religion has an exceptional ability to incite violence and war. And fittingly, some of the most potent religious narratives that justify violence are, like grandsonism, not explicitly religious per se. While some would frame the war on terror as liberal democracy versus Islamic fundamentalism, others might see the opposite, i.e., a pseudo-theological American nationalism versus a region of the world devastated by years of foreign intervention and military occupation. And that's not even to mention oil production or Dick Cheney's business friends. However, the conventional way that the war on terror is framed serves an important purpose. According to theologian William T. Kavanaugh, the myth of religious violence promotes a dichotomy between us in the secular West, who are rational and peacemaking, and them, the hordes of violent religious fanatics in the Muslim world. Their violence is religious and therefore irrational and divisive. Our violence, on the other hand, is rational, peacemaking, and necessary. Regrettably, we find ourselves forced to bomb them into the higher rationality. So for Kavanaugh, the idea that religion is uniquely violent is often more of an ideological function, dependent on specific definitions of what's religion and what's not, used to justify more rational forms of non-religious violence, often carried out in the name of the state. It seems that the episode might be leaning into the idea that the seemingly decades-long holy war between grandson factions is a reflection of the absurdity of lots of actually existing human conflict, in which people are willing to kill or be killed over disagreements on religious and mythical narratives.
It's parenting like this that pushed me into religious radicalism.
So, is Rick and Morty using the holy wars of grandsonism to argue that religion is both A, often a totally made up thing, that B, is unique in its ability to create irrational violence? Maybe. But according to Kavanaugh, it's a mistake to attempt to draw a distinction between secular and religious violence. We must conclude that there is no coherent way to isolate religious ideologies with a peculiar tendency towards violence from their tamer secular counterparts. So-called secular ideologies and institutions like nationalism and liberalism can be just as absolutist, divisive, and irrational as so-called religion. People kill for all sorts of things. The point is not simply that secular violence should be given equal attention to religious violence. The point is that the distinction between secular and religious violence is unhelpful, misleading, and mystifying, and should be avoided altogether. So basically, it's not that religion is uniquely violent in history, especially given that, according to Kavanaugh, the secular religious dichotomy is a modern invention. Rather, it's that absolutism and irrationality are at the heart of all political violence. So unlike the Sam Harrises and Bill Maher's of the world, who argue that Western violence towards the Islamic world is justifiable due to the superior rationality of liberal democracy, for Kavanaugh, there isn't really a distinction between so-called religious and secular violence. Okay, so if that's the case, then why do we still often associate religion with irrational violence? Well, for Kavanaugh, the myth of religious violence establishes a reassuring dichotomy between their violence, which is absolutist, divisive, and irrational, and our violence, which is modest, unitive, and rational. Making the violence of the other uniquely religious allows those on the other side to feel confident that they're violent, but like in a good way.
There isn't even a god in the real world, you fragmented putz.
This also involves the type of absolutism that both religious and secular violence have, because both sides believe they have absolute access to some type of goodness or truth. And then they have a mission to expand the reach of that goodness or truth. And speaking of goodness and truth, have you checked out Wisecrack Live yet? It's our new stream. It takes place every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific right here on our YouTube page. It's fun. We watch videos, talk about what's going on in the world. We have a really fun chat, and I really mean that. It's like the best chat on YouTube. So come check it out sometime. We would love to have you there. Okay, so these themes are also present in Summer's storyline, as Die Hard has become a foundational myth across the galaxy.
Every sentient civilization across the galaxy eventually develops the same myth.
In Centauri, it's known as Tower Man. The Oranese have their Thornburg cycle, and in Andromeda, it's called foolish to have imagined you'd be able to kill.
And the potency of this myth has clearly led to lots of very stupid violence.
Instead of handing me an unloaded gun, she'll hand me a...
Die hard, die hard, die hard!
Summer only reads this religious text when it helps her achieve her goal of killing aliens.
You left your book in the bathroom. I read it while I took a I mean, mostly the ending.
The quasi-religious mythology of Die Hard is reduced into a mere conduit for more violence.
Walkie-talkie Die Hard, motherfucker.
So, what is the show saying here? On the one hand, they might be pointing out the seeming absurdity of religion in general, and more specifically, its tendency to engender violence amongst its adherents. On the other, maybe they're taking a more broad approach and showing how in the wake of events like the 9/11 attacks, politics and religion can be just two sides of the same irrationally violent coin.
Better to die in Roy than to serve in hell.
As Kavanaugh concludes, this opposition of rational and irrational, secular and religious, Western and Muslim, is not simply descriptive, but helps to create the opposition that it purports to describe. Well said, William. Well said. But what do you guys think? Did Justin Roiland and co. make a cynical holiday episode for 9/11? Or is growing up during the War on Terror just broken my brain? Please let us know in the comments. Thanks as always to our patrons for your support, and be sure to be a good grandson, and please like this video, subscribe to the channel, all that stuff. It means a lot. As always, thanks so much for watching, and walkie-talkie die hard, motherfuckers.